Mitchum in his own words. More quotes from Bobby the Mitch. On rushes. I've made a practice of never looking at the rushes of my film. In fact, I haven't seen half the movies I've made. But Orion's daughter, the director, David Lean, insisted that I examine some footage. I agreed just to keep him quiet. The first thing that comes to mind on the screen was Leo McKern completely gassed in a pub. Then the scene shifted to a shot of Trevor Howard staggering up the beach, absolutely stoned. And then Lean cut to a shot of me on the beach, wiped out. All I could say was, the camera never lies. It was to Bob Lardine in the New York Sunday News, 1970. On Fame and Fans. Yeah, I take off sometimes. I just float off like I used to when I was a kid. Dorothy, she understands, the bee's wife. She'd better by now. She's had enough of it. I've been in a constant motion of escape my entire life. I've just never found the right corner to hide in. And now I've sold my anonymity to become a chromium-plated geek. You know what the average Robert Mitchum fan is? He's full of warts and dandruff, and he's probably got a hernia too. But he sees me up there on the screen and thinks, if that bum can make it, I can become president. And I bring a ray of hope to the great unwashed. And that was to Roderick Gilchrist in the Daily Mail, London, 1974. Somebody asked my wife once, what's your idea of your husband? And she answered, he's a masturbation image. Well, that's what we all are. Up there on the screen, our goddamn eyeball is 6 feet high. The poor bastards who buy tickets think you really amount to something. To Roger Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times, 1969. About a pub scuffle in Ireland. Hell, there was no fight. Some guy thought I was Kirk Douglas and kept pestering me for my autograph in a pub. He grabbed me by the arm and got nasty, so I wrote, up your nose, and I signed it Kirk Douglas per Robert Mitchum. The next thing I know, he swings a right and hits me whap in the eye. Then he ran away and hid behind some people in the corner. Why that fellow couldn't break an egg, it didn't worry me. To the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, 1959. On making bad movies. After you've lost your girlish laughter and become a disappointed virgin, you're not going to recapture that starry-eyed belief that it's for real. They sit you down and say, we don't make pictures, we make money. It's a matter of exploitation. But the alternative is to go to work and get the hives. I have the same feeling that Johnny Houston has. He says, you can make bad pictures too. They want bad pictures, we can do it. But it'll cost them more. The trouble with movies is that they're so damn dumb. I'm just a guy making a living, the only way I know how. To Sid Edelman in the Toronto Star, 1979. On script selection. I've always turned down a lot of scripts. I turned down Wild Rovers. It sounded like Blake Edwards wrote it as a compilation of old Street and Smith Western magazines. I turned down the Wild Bunch too. What do I need with Crazy Sam Peckinpah? I was down in Durango at the same time he was. I was doing 5-card stud with Dean Martin, and we lived much better. Peckinpah's company was living in tents in the desert with reptiles and spiders and cheap whores crawling around. Who needs that? I turned down Patton, too. They get very offended when you turn down their scripts. What do you mean you don't want to do it, they asked. Get somebody else, I say. Who would you suggest? What the hell do I care? To George Anderson in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, 1971. Then another on that. I never take much notice of scripts. Dick Powell once sent me 30 pages of a script, that was The Hunters, saying how good it was. And it seemed fine to me. I got to fly a fighter plane and spend a lot of time in the officers' club in Japan. And you could go to Japan and scout it out for a couple of weeks, he said. That sounded good. So I said yes. Then he sent me page 31, and I found out my plane crashed, and I spent the rest of the film carrying some fellow through Korea on my back. You ought to cast that part by the pound, I said. Find some wisp. What's Sinatra doing? But of course, they saddled me with some hulk who was Lee Phillips. We got heavier by the minute. We did the whole thing on the Fox Ranch, and I never got near Japan. And I was to Roderick Mann and the Sunday Express, London, 1978. To be continued, and this is May 28th, 2011, 7:31 p.m.